Battlecry of Freedom by Ngakma Nor'dzin.
Part 2, the slogans. Slogan 44. Train in the 3 difficulties.
Kawa sumla lapai ja.
Recognize the suggestion of misbehavior. Patiently ride the correction. Ride with the certainty of continuing good behavior. Intention, response, and satisfaction create patterning in the mind. The riding scenarios below are examples of how this might function. Example 1. Number 1, intention.
The horse is perceived by the rider as badly behaved. The rider classifies the horse as bad. Expecting bad behaviour, the rider experiences aversion and mounts the horse with the intention of riding forcefully and aggressively to preempt any bad behaviour.
2. Response.
The rider attempts to dominate and bully the horse to behave well, even before any bad behaviour has manifested. The horse responds with fear and bad behaviour, trying to rid itself of the aggressive rider.
3. Satisfaction.
The rider ends up on the ground with the horse careering around the pen, bucking like a bronco. This confirms to the rider's satisfaction that the horse is bad. The rider is satisfied that overly strong and dominant riding was necessary, and the horse is a lost cause. This confirmation of intention and response is the experience of satisfaction. This may not be a happy feeling, but it is satisfaction in terms of confirming perception and response and further establishing the perceptual pattern.
The horse is perceived as bad. The reaction of aversion to badness creates a response. When expectation is fulfilled, it goes badly. There is satisfaction that perception was confirmed and response justified. This interaction creates a complete pattern. If any of the 3 factors of patterning is missing, the pattern will not be complete. The pattern will not be so strongly established. This is illustrated in the second example. Example 2. 1. Intention.
The horse has a reputation for bad behaviour. The rider trusts their riding skills and decides to keep an open mind, approaching the horse quietly and respectfully.
2. Response.
When the horse bucks and prances, the rider remains in the saddle. The rider asks firmly but kindly for the horse to respond. The horse realizes that the rider is not attempting to dominate and is not being aggressive and gradually relaxes. The horse begins to respond to the rider. Horse and rider begin to enjoy harmonious communication.
3. Satisfaction.
The rider is happy that the open approach worked and that harmonious riding became possible.
This interaction will have created a positive pattern. It will be a root of goodness. The rider had open perception and responded directly to what was actually happening, rather than to what might have been expected to happen. The third version of this example is not so positive in terms of the relationship between the horse and rider, but is still a root of goodness because it is based in open perception and direct response. Example 3. 1. Intention.
The horse has a reputation for bad behaviour. The rider trusts their riding skills and decides to approach the horse quietly and respectfully.
2. Response.
When the horse bucks and prances, the rider remains in the saddle. The rider asks firmly but kindly for the horse to respond. The horse is so used to domination and aggression that it is not able to relax and respond to the rider. After a reasonable length of time, the rider gives up the attempt to work with the horse.
3. Satisfaction.
The rider is happy that the horse was given the best chance to overcome habitual behaviour. The rider is satisfied at having avoided being prejudiced by the horse's reputation.
Maybe in time, after more groundwork and schooling, the horse will start to trust the open and friendly approach of the rider and will be able to relax and respond, so that harmonious riding becomes a possibility.
Dokyense Rinpoche says, if, for instance, an uncontrollably strong emotion comes over us so that we feel helplessly in its power, we should nevertheless confront it and question it. Where are its weapons? Where are its muscles? Where is its great army and its political strength?
This slogan describes karma, leki, the process of conditioned perception and response. The three difficulties refer to the difficulty of seeing the moment of perception, the difficulty of catching the habitual response, the difficulty of cutting the flow of habitual perception and response. Perception continually arises. If perception is direct and clear, and the response is open and appropriate, then awakening is possible. However, if perception is conditioned by attraction, aversion, and indifference, and rooted in past or projected experience, then response will be based in habitual patterning and add to that patterning.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche says, the first difficulty is to realize the point at which you are tricked by your own emotions. The second difficulty is to dispel or exorcise our emotionalism. The third difficulty is to cut the continuity of that emotionalism.
Karma is the ruling force or korawa, samsara, cyclic existence. It creates the experience of dissatisfaction through habitual patterning. For a pattern to be fully created or to strengthen an existing pattern, there need to be three factors: intention, action, and satisfaction. Intention arises from perception. There is the intention to respond to what is perceived. The response is active. Activity is then engaged in response to what is perceived. Satisfaction is experienced through seeing that the perception and response correlate and confirm one another. If any of these three factors is absent, then a pattern is not fully created, or an existing pattern is weakened rather than strengthened.
Ngakpa Chogyam says, fortunately, the law of karma can also be changed. If the law of karma could not be broken, there could be no enlightenment, or enlightenment would have to be causal. The law of karma belongs to the world of dualism, which, like ego, distracted being, or the famous I, is illusory. The legal system of karma has no jurisdiction in terms of non-duality. When we realize beginningless enlightenment, the law enforcement agencies of karma evaporate. They boil away into space, because they were our unenlightenment.
Karma does not have to be undone item by item. This would be to view perception and response as materialistic and mechanical. In every moment there is the potential for perception to be free of conditioning. There is the potential for response to be free of conditioning. Karma simply dissolves in the moment that perception is clear and direct, and response is open and appropriate. This is awakening.
Ngakpa Chogyam says, meditation is our only weapon against this repressive regime, and it constitutes civil disobedience in the form of passive resistance. By allowing the development of experiential space through the practice of Shine, according to the four Naljos, we discover our own intrinsic awareness.
The response to a stimulus cannot be known until that stimulus is perceived. perception can give rise to startlingly strong responses.
Tokme Zangpo says, when mental afflictions arise, it is difficult to notice them in the beginning, difficult to avert them in the middle, and difficult to interrupt their continuity in the end.
Emptiness protects the mind from such unknown and unpredictable stimuli by enabling conditioned perception to be noticed immediately. Unconditioned perception is empty. Habitual response may still engage if there is a lack of experience of embracing unconditioned perception, but the pattern will not be so strong. Eventually, unconditioned perception enables unconditioned response. Then karma self-liberates in the moment. The third difficulty is then addressed, that of continuing to allow unconditioned perception and unconditioned response. This cuts the strings of conditioned patterning.
Shema Rinpoche says, of the three, the most important is to try to tame each negative emotion as soon as you notice it.
The discontinuous continuity of direct, clear perception and compassionate, appropriate response is the experience of Rigpa, non-duality, awakening. Understanding the three difficulties, seeing them, and training in overcoming them is the path of awakening.
Ngakpa ö-Dzin says, once we've woken up a bit, we have responsibility. A practitioner is someone who can regret a thought. No one has seen the thought, heard the thought, or suffered from it, but the practitioner regrets it nevertheless.